very excited to be talking about mentorship and the importance of mentorship to startup executives, founders, even employees, with Gary Little, who's played a big role in my company where he serves on the board. So my name is Sirish Raghuram. I'm co-founder and CEO at Platform9. We're a hybrid cloud computing startup. And we're talking about the importance of mentorship in the technology industry, especially in startups. It's a big topic. And Gary has been on our board. He led our last round of financing in the Series C. And he's a co-founder and general partner at Canvas Ventures, which is an early stage VC firm based in Sand Hill Road in the Bay Area. And he's been a VC for more than 20 years. Before co-founding Canvas Ventures, he was at Morgan Taylor Ventures and also Venrock, primarily focused on enterprise software companies. And his investments include Mulesoft. He was one of the earliest investors in Mulesoft, which many of you may know was one of the biggest IPOs in the last 5 years in the technology industry. And he's also invested in other well-known companies like NextTag, Evernote, Kinetica, and others. He's been named to the Midas List twice. And before being in venture, Gary has held exec positions at Apple, Sun, and IBM. So Gary, we're talking about mentorship in the tech industry.
I just say, thank you, Sirish, very much. So I noted that this track was leadership and inclusion, and Sirish is the Indian for inclusion, and I was trying to figure out, and he said, well, you're the old guy. So with that background, I actually, my first venture job was 32 years ago out of business school. So it's a lot has changed since then, so it's great to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. We're trying to check a few boxes off, right? So we're talking about tech mentorship in the tech industry, such a large topic. Where should we begin?
Well, it might be helpful just to know where most of the people in the audience are. So if we started this out by raising our hands to get some blood flowing. So how many people here are pre-funded startups? Okay, very good. How many have received angel or seed investing? Okay, and how many are late stage? Okay, so mainly pre-funded and seed stage. And what about just at existing tech companies thinking maybe I'd like to go start a company sometime? Okay, good. So we have an early stage group. The topic is tech mentorship, and maybe a good place to start would be at the beginning, people that are just thinking about starting a company, about where do you get that mentorship to get feedback, advice, to get introductions to other people that can give you even better advice, and maybe early investment. And I could go through some that I see, and I'd love to hear you, Sirish, which one you've used. You've raised about $36 million to date. So some that came to mind, I mean, when you're just going out and starting, it's pretty obvious. It's not that different in terms of seeking mentorship than working your network. So who do you usually do? I mean, besides your parents, who you go and seek advice from, particularly if they were in business, you go to your former employers. So if you have a boss, it's really important to not only do a good job, but actually, and try to make your boss look good, but to have your boss have an interest in your career, in your development. And then when you leave, keep in touch with that boss so that they, most will be more than happy to give you feedback, give you advice, and help you along. And again, most importantly, to give you intros and contacts that you may not have. Who might you want to get to? You may want to get to founders and CEOs of companies that are doing something in your space. So again, there's your network, but you're networking to people that are closer to understanding what it is that you're doing. And if they've been founders or CEOs, they might also be interested in not only giving you advice, they may join as early advisors that you can put on the slide when you're raising money, and they might actually be willing to be your early investors, angel investors, your former bosses, your parents, and these CEOs. They're the ones that might know, hey, that's a great idea. I know this space. It's unsolved. You found me. You network your way to me. I will put in a little bit of money. And then they might introduce you to other angel investors or seed investors who will see these advisors and see that the people that know the space better than the investor does have invested their own money. And it's just this whole credibility, because it's very difficult to raise money if you don't have introductions, because guys like us look to people that are smarter than we are in a particular space to be the filter to say, hey, they are using their name and reputation to make an introduction to you, and we will always take those meetings. Just because they have expertise and we value their judgment. And I'm just curious, Sirish, when you were, so Sirish was many years at VMware, how did you get some, the feedback to get the confidence to basically start a company and this journey? How did you do it?
Yeah, so I owe a lot to many mentors who helped me through my career at VMware, and in the 5 years since starting Platform9. I'll give you examples, just a few. When we were starting the company, one of the things that gave us a lot of conviction was believing that there was an unmet need in the market. And so I think it was a lot of, in terms of getting as many customer conversations as possible. I had help from my alumni network of people who were at VMware and were no longer at VMware, who helped get me in front of as many customers as possible, which helped us validate the idea and build our own conviction in what we were trying to do. These same people also often introduced me to to investors, and increased my network access. And ultimately, I was introduced by one of my mentors from VMware to a venture capital firm called Redpoint Ventures, who did our first round of capital. And so I, started the company. We raised money, thanks in part to, I think, mentors that we had access to. And as we've been building the company, I can tell you that you will need, one of the things you will need in startup is you'll need every resource you can get access to. And there's just no limit to how much I think you can amplify and get things done if you have the right mentors around you. So I think being able to identify and enlist strong mentors is, I think, one of the vital skills any entrepreneur or founder needs to have. And I've certainly had my share. I'll walk you through some examples of them. But Gary, you must be seeing this a lot in your portfolio companies as well, is especially early stage companies versus later stage companies. The kinds of mentors that they need are different based on where they are in the startup journey.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so once you're pre-funded and you get some customers and you may get some traction, and you may go out raising your Series A. And what I call by a Series A is the first time maybe one of your investors takes a board seat, and you part with a painful amount of ownership in return for a bigger check. It's important to be very mindful of who you choose, because it'll really be your first board member. That board member is also going to be probably head of your compensation committee, and you're getting married for 3, 5, 7, 10 years. It's going to be a long journey. And I'd say, at least in the Valley, most of the founders typically have technical engineering backgrounds, and maybe they're new to the go-to-market, they're new to the financial side and fundraising, and maybe they've never really, there's a lot of different types of marketing people between marketing communications, lead gen, product marketing, and that, have had less experience working with these different functional areas. So your first investor can also be, I think founders are actually saying, gee, I've never done this before, and they're looking for input and advice besides the money. So if you're fortunate enough to have options in terms of funding, I would really make sure that you found somebody that really is passionate about what you're doing, understands the vision, that their vision is similar to yours, so you won't be implementing their vision, but they're going to help you implement your vision, and can help you see around the corners that you've never looked behind before yourself. And usually when you're putting together the board, it's also, you have the common and then you have the preferred as the investor. There's often, to create a balanced board, the opportunity to bring in an independent board member. And that independent board member, a great person to bring in, is somebody that's been a founder and successfully been a founding CEO that has scaled a company at least to a certain point, because they're not an investor, so they're not pulling the financial chains. They're there to really help the founder build a company, and again, see around the corner to things that they discovered, so they're not surprises, so that the CEO can get, and the founder can get ahead of those, so it doesn't hurt the company. So you're asking about different stages. At picking your board is really important, because like it or not, they will be people who are providing advice, counsel, governance, introductions, but also will hopefully be very good mentors to you.
You know, I want to make this personal and give you a couple of examples of how that has been, you know, the case in my journey as a startup founder. As Gary mentioned, like many of you, I was an engineer by background. I had never sold a product in my life. I had never run a P&L or owned a P&L sheet. And so now, after I raised the money, I realized, oh, wow, I've not only got to build a product, but you got to go sell this. And I've never sold in my life. So I was in a conference like this where Hans Robertson, who is one of the founders of a company called Meraki, they made these wireless routers that they were acquired by Cisco. Hans Robertson was on stage, and he was talking about his experience with sales models and inside sales versus enterprise sales and the efficiencies and how to run it. And I could immediately just tell that this was someone who just knew, he'd been a founder, he'd been a product guy, he'd been an engineer, but you know, he'd really understood the go-to-market implications. And so I reached out to him after he was done with this talk and said, hey, I'd love to get coffee with you. And so we met, you know, I think in Menlo Park for coffee on a Saturday morning. And, you know, he must have seen something in me, and you know, he signed on as an advisor and a mentor, and he helped me recruit our early sales team. He helped me think about how to sell the product in a more methodical manner. And I had, you know, I did this with a couple of sales execs. So I had Herb Kunitz, who was the president of Hortonworks, and I had Hans Robertson, who was the founder of Meraki, advised me in terms of our go-to-market, because I knew that that was a weakness of mine. I was very strong. I knew exactly what product to build and how to build it. I did not know as much on the go-to-market side, so I was very proactive about trying to go and find mentors, and I would grab any opportunity that just came my way. It could be an introduction from, I got introductions from my board, and I've been very fortunate to have board members who are also, I think, very good mentors. But I encourage you to think about where your weaknesses are, where your blind spots are, and be proactive about finding people who are, you know, who've been through that journey and have expert level knowledge in that field and are now interested in giving back. And they're doing it not because of the money or because of, you know, any reputational aspect. It's because they want to give back, right? They want to see you be successful, and you'll find startup founders like that.
It always surprises me how the busiest people in the world that have no time because they're running a company and they have an unbelievably hard job to do, how willing they are to help other entrepreneurs. I think they know how hard it is, and they appreciate the help they once received. And if you get the chemistry right, and they think you're, you know, doing the right things, how willing they are to help you. There's also paid help, and I can recommend that as well. So a number of our founders, as well as CEOs that were not founders, and I'll mention partners in my firm as well, have said, gee, I am having issues, interpersonal issues with teams, which is a big challenge in any organization, and just how to try to align the team to get them to work together better and have a common purpose, and execute together, it's not always the easiest thing to do. So I can recommend, and it's fairly prevalent, executive coaches. They're very expensive, but they can be very, very helpful. They can be used one-on-one with the CEO, and there's firms like 10x CEO. So, for example, the CEO of Mulesoft was mentored by the 10x CEO group. And there's also executive coaches that will come in and work with your teams and help you get better. It sounds a little HR-y and stuff, but it can really make a difference because we're all blind. Like I'm rambling on, and I think it's interesting, and you're saying you're so boring. You know, we don't get cues, right? So the executive coaches will help get the team to tell you where your weaknesses are and how you can improve.
So I'm actually going to turn the tables on you a little bit, Gary. Are there examples of mentors you've had in your career and that you found you'd like to share with this group?
I did get mentored when I came into venture because it's just like a startup. You're going into something you've never done before. And I had been in tech. I'd been at IBM, Sun Microsystems, and Apple in a variety of different fields, but I'd never actually been part of a startup, and I'd never been, well, I'd been a couple years as an associate at a venture firm, but never been a general partner. So when I joined Morgan Thaler Ventures, Gary Morgenthaler, who had been in the business for about 20 years, and his father started its 50-year-old firm now, they spent a lot of time just teaching me how to be a venture capitalist. And you always, and that's something you never quite learn because I'm still learning with every new wave, every new sector. You're always making mistakes, so you're always learning from them. And I've had the opportunity to bring in a female partner into our firm as a senior associate. And in the same fund she joined as a senior associate, by the time before we raised the next fund, she was among the 3 most senior partners in the firm in a 15-partner firm. And for the first year, I did every single thing with her, meeting with companies, doing the due diligence, term sheet discussions, and then attending the board meetings as a board observer, partly to help the company, but mainly to provide feedback to her. And the great thing about that was after mentoring her, it kind of transitioned to, I just started learning so much from her because she was a sponge and was very good. And she, I think, has been 4 times on the Midas List now. And it's probably the thing I'm most proud of is in my career is not the investments I made, although I'm always proud of them, but was identifying and helping bring on somebody to the industry that is now a leader in the industry and a leader at our firm. And now am I co-founder of Canvas.
That's fantastic. I did not know that about Rebecca. I assume that's who you're talking about.
Yeah, and you can see why I'm now learning from her.
So we have about a minute left. Let me see if there's any questions from the audience. I have one question for you, Gary, but any questions from the audience that I can take? Yes.
All right. So when picking mentors, there's also a lot of people who advertise themselves as like coaches and mentors. And so, what are the things you look for to it's always a tricky situation. The best people, they are not volunteering, but there are a lot more people who volunteer to be a coach. So how do you find the right one?
That's a great. I have a strong opinion on that, so I'll go first. I'm very wary of people who have time. The best people don't have time. They're always busy with something. So I think I'd go look at conferences where they're speaking, where and you know by the kind of, and you should be able to look at their work and see that this is remarkable, right? If you see them showcase remarkable work in the space, whatever the space is, you know that they'd be an outlier, and you should try to find outliers. An average mentor is I don't think it's the right use of time, because you don't have time as a startup founder or exec to spend time with a lot of mentors. You'd have to pick your mentors, pick good ones. I think I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah, probably the flip side of this, picking the wrong mentor can give you the wrong advice. And so there's leverage both ways. You pick a very good one and it can make you much, much better. Pick another one can, at a minimum, waste your time and in a painful way could actually send you in the wrong direction. So my advice would be, just like we have the people we respect refer in opportunities to us, when you're looking for a mentor, go reach out and get referrals as to like who's the smartest person in the space, like who's really good at this, and try to get the top 10%.
Yeah, very highly referenced people. I know we have past time, so, but thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I hope you found this session useful, and congratulations to all of you.
Yeah.
Good luck in your startup journey.
Yeah, thank you, Sirish.
Thank you, Gary.